A human man bought a container with a bunch of beautiful alien women inside for $1. Benny Thatch had exactly $1 to his name, a jar of questionable pickles, and a pile of unpaid invoices threatening to declare independence from his apartment. The dollar, crumpled and greasy from being repurposed as a napkin during a recent burrito incident, sat in his palm like it had somewhere better to be. Benny stood in the middle of the interplanetary salvage auction Lot 42B, which smelled faintly of ozone, fried electronics, and very old regret. The auctioneer was a retired moon miner with a megaphone fused to her jaw and the eyes of someone who'd seen things in zero gravity she could never forget. Her voice crackled through the air like static soaked in whiskey. Lot 8842, unmarked container. Possible contents include high-density scrap, low-value organics, or nothing. Starting bid, $1 galactic dollar. Most of the crowd looked away, distracted by a nearby brawl over a slightly haunted hyperdrive. Benny squinted at the container. It was tall, wide, and rusted like it had weathered rains. Alien symbols ran along its side like the graffiti of a particularly emo civilization. No one else raised a hand. $1? Benny muttered. That's the price of 1/3 of a coffee. That's a suspiciously generous burrito. That's probably a mistake. He raised his hand. Sold to the slightly confused human in the greasy coat, the auctioneer declared. Someone behind Benny laughed. A cybernetic ferret hissed. A nearby vendor tried to sell him a warranty. With some difficulty, and the help of a very offended forklift, Benny hauled the container back to his junkyard apartment, which was technically located behind a closed-down noodle bar on the edge of Marsport's least respected sector. His AI butler, Jeeves, greeted him with its usual disapproval. "Another acquisition, sir? Might I suggest instead investing in clean undergarments?" "Shut it, Jeeves. This one's going to be different." "You said that about the haunted juicer." "It still makes smooth sometimes." The container loomed like a bad decision. Benny poked at the control panel until it sparked, then punched it. The door slid open with a long hiss and an unnecessarily dramatic fog effect. He waited, bracing himself for raccoons, or space raccoons, or cursed vacuum. Instead, 6 figures stepped out, tall, graceful, humanoid, but not. Each woman had long tapering ears, luminous skin that shifted in hue like oil on water, and eyes that looked like they could download your secrets. Their clothes were alien, vaguely tactical, and vaguely impractical. One wore what looked like a shimmering jumpsuit made of shifting code. Another had armor woven from living vines that hissed at Benny. A third smiled at him with a warmth that made his knees forget how knees worked. He said. The tallest of the group, a woman with silver hair and an expression like she'd personally seen the birth and death of galaxies, stepped forward. "You are our new owner?" "Owner?" Benny blinked. "Hold up, that feels morally questionable. I just paid $1. I thought it was full of like broken toasters." A second woman, shorter and twitchier, shoved past the tall one. Her voice was sharp and fast. "He's not a slaver. Look at him. That coat has ketchup stains older than this colony." "Excuse me?" Benny said. "That's not ketchup. That's, actually, you know what? Fair." The silver-haired woman inclined her head. "We are the Fae of Sector 7. We were sealed for transport after the fall of Bastion Aegis. You have released us. Cool. Cool. That sounds important. Does it come with a refund policy?" The smallest of them, a silent, intense-looking woman with red tattoos moving along her skin like caffeine-fueled snakes, reached forward and grabbed his collar. Her eyes glowed. Benny's vision briefly filled with stars, static, and an overwhelming sense of being judged by someone very good at judging. Then she let go. "He's acceptable," she said. "Well, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me this year." Benny made coffee, or something resembling coffee, courtesy of his perpetually confused beverage synthesizer. The alien women looked around the apartment with the wariness of soldiers expecting ambush, but occasionally poking strange objects, like his lava lamp, with curiosity. One of them accidentally reprogrammed Jeeves by sneezing. "So, Benny said, holding a cup that smelled like roasted anxiety. "What's the plan here? I mean, you don't actually want to stay in my, premium minimalist dwelling indefinitely, right?" The one with glowing lines on her arms, leery, rolled her eyes. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Bought 6 beautiful space women for $1 and invited them into my apartment? You've made yourself a target. We're wanted. Nixcore is tracking us. They'll come for us. And now they'll come for you. Nixcore? Is that a detergent brand? Another woman. They're the most powerful corporation in the quadrant. They specialize in biotechnological exploitation, resource manipulation, and extremely aggressive marketing. I once got trapped in one of their smart billboards, Leary added. It called me emotionally unavailable. Okay, Benny said, but why are they after you? Silence. Then, we'll tell you when we trust you, said the silver-haired leader. And how long does that take? The tattooed one spoke. Traditionally, 37 solar years, or 3 rounds of karaoke. Benny blinked. You're kidding. She did not blink back. We'll start with Bohemian Rhapsody. That night, Benny lay on his battered couch while 5 alien women squatted in his kitchen, dismantling the blender. The 6th one, Leary, sat cross-legged on the ceiling for reasons unknown. Jeeves sulked in the corner, humming ominously in binary. He stared at the ceiling. Okay, so I have $1 left, 6 space fugitives, and possibly a death sentence. Leary dropped down beside him without a sound. You're taking this remarkably well. I've lived in Marsport for 8 years, he said. This is only the 2nd weirdest Tuesday I've had. He didn't ask about the first. He didn't want to know. The next morning, Benny was awoken by the sound of his blender screaming. Not a mechanical whine, not a polite beep, an actual scream, like it had glimpsed the void and decided it wasn't ready. He stumbled into the kitchen to find 3 of the alien women huddled around the remains of the device. The blender's base glowed an ominous shade of orange. The pitcher was floating 6 inches above the counter. A fork was orbiting it. Good morning, Benny said, rubbing his eyes. Did we invent sentient soup? Leary, crouched on the fridge and eating dried noodles straight from the packet, looked up. Tessa tried to retrofit the motor with a plasma stabilizer, something about extracting quantum flavor. Tessa waved a glowing spanner. In theory, it should have enhanced texture integrity. Instead, we accidentally gave it a soul. Can we de-soul it? The smallest one, Vex, he was learning to call her, stabbed a switch on the wall. The blender let out a mournful hiss and dropped dead. I miss the days when the weirdest thing in my kitchen was expired ketchup. Outside, the alley was unusually quiet. Benny peeked through the blinds. A few hover bikes passed lazily above, but the usual street vendors were absent. Even Old Man Krill, who shouted about illegal clones every morning, was missing. That meant one of 2 things. Either Benny had slept through the apocalypse or something was up. Leary joined him by the window, licking cheese dust off her fingers. They're scanning the area. Who's they? Nixcore, or worse, subcontractors. Bounty hunters? Worse, freelancers. Benny paled. Freelancers, as in unpaid, underregulated, caffeine-fueled, morally flexible people with weapons. Exactly, some of them have podcasts. Benny backed away from the window like it was contagious. Okay. You've got enemies, multiple ones, with guns and possibly merch lines. Why are they so interested in you? I mean, besides the cheekbones. Tessa pulled a projection from her wristband, filling the air with floating blueprints, star maps, and what looked suspiciously like a recipe for neutron pie. We were part of Project Mnemos, a Nixcore experiment meant to create empathic operatives who could navigate hostile environments by reading and manipulating emotional fields. Leary crossed her arms. Turns out that messing with people's feelings is a great way to start rebellions, especially when you realize your employer considers you property. We escaped during the Bastion Aegis collapse, said the silver-haired leader, now seated calmly on a crate of expired marshmallows. They've been trying to reclaim us ever since. We're valuable. Benny nodded slowly. And I bought all of you for $1. You really should read next time, Leary said. Jeeves rolled past, humming a suspiciously sarcastic version of the Marsport anthem. Might I suggest relocation before you are vaporized, sir? I have several recommendations for discreet yet affordable extermination insurance. I'll consider it after I have caffeine. Benny's idea of hiding was, historically, to change his socks and hope the problem left. But now, with 6 fugitives in his kitchen, hiding meant loading them into his cargo van. A repurposed shuttle module with 1 seat, 2 functioning thrusters, and a paint job that looked like someone had fought a squid, and heading for the one place in Marsport where strange was standard. Cosmocon. Marsport's annual science fiction and speculative pop culture convention was many things. Chaotic, loud, underfunded, and inexplicably popular among sentient slime species. It was also the one place 6 long-eared women with alien features could walk around without raising more eyebrows than a malfunctioning eyebrow-raising bot. Benny threw a towel over a leaking thruster and crossed his fingers. All right, we pretend you're part of an experimental space opera cosplay group. We blend in, stay low, buy some overpriced snacks, and don't, under any circumstances, get involved in any weird competitions, games, galactic roulette wheels, or talent shows. The ride to Cosmocon was 20 minutes of light turbulence, heavy sarcasm, and a brief moment where the ship tried to eject Benny after detecting excessive body odor. Once landed, the women stepped into the convention center and were immediately surrounded by a swarm of fans. A 12-year-old pointed at Leary. "Whoa, your ears are like next-level realistic. Did you 3D print those?" Leary gave a diplomatic smile. "Yes, from a corpse." The child wandered off, mildly impressed. The convention floor was a sensory overload. Stalls sold everything from Martian comic books to anti-gravity dice. Someone in a space llama costume roller-skated past, followed by a robot that screamed compliments at passersby. Benny clung to a churro as his only anchor to reality. Vex spotted a VR combat tournament and immediately disappeared into it, reappearing 10 minutes later with 3 medals and a foam sword she refused to surrender. Tessa began inspecting every tech stall, asking increasingly specific questions about neural feedback latency and explosive resilience, alarming several vendors into offering her discounts. Meanwhile, Benny and Leary were lured into a high-stakes poker game by a charming creature with 4 mouths and an overuse of cologne. It wasn't until the 3rd hand that Leary leaned in and whispered, "By the way, I can read everyone's thoughts." "You're just telling me now? I thought you wanted to experience honest failure." They won the table in 6 minutes. By the time they left, they'd acquired a gold-plated belt, a suspiciously humming briefcase, and a contact card for a mercenary named Fizz who promised he was 99% loyal 40% of the time. Back at the van, Benny loaded the spoils of their adventure. Okay, that went better than expected. Then the briefcase exploded. No one was injured, unless you counted Pride. Benny picked marshmallow shrapnel from his hair, while Vex casually stomped out the fire using her boot, which promptly hissed and healed itself. A drone descended from above, silent as a whisper, and projected a holographic message onto the smoldering pavement. The image was a smiling figure in a business suit, face blank, voice soothing. "Hello, valued citizen. You are harboring unauthorized assets. Please surrender the anomalies and receive a complimentary funeral discount." Jeeves perked up from the van's dashboard. "Sir, I believe we are now officially doomed." Benny looked at the women, then at the message, then at the very charred churro in his hand. "Right," he said. "Looks like we need a plan." "And better snacks," added. "And deodorant," whispered Jeeves. "Shut up, Jeeves." The good news was that no one had died in the explosion. The bad news was that the van now made a sound like a hiccuping walrus every time it turned left. Benny sat on a rusted toolbox inside his garage, poking at a shattered drone wing with a butter knife. The alien women were gathered in various degrees of restlessness around the room. Vex was sharpening a plasma blade on his toaster. Tessa was arguing with Jeeves, who had developed a passive-aggressive fondness for sighing in Morse code. Leary, for reasons she refused to explain, was teaching herself to juggle batteries using only telekinesis. "We need to go dark," said the silver-haired one, who had now introduced herself as Kayla. "No data trail, no signals, we're still traceable." "I thought we faked our deaths," Benny said. "We even blew up a perfectly innocent briefcase for dramatic effect." Kayla shook her head. "Nix Core's predictive algorithms are better than you think. They can simulate potential behaviors, estimate movement based on minimal input. And worst of all, they hired Fizz," Tessa muttered. "He's cheap, unreliable, but irritatingly effective when he's sober." "Wasn't he the guy with the half-squid arm and the perfume obsession?" Benny asked. "He gave me a coupon for flamethrower polish." "That's him," said Leary. "He only takes jobs that require chaos, sarcasm, or cake." "So what you're saying," Benny said, "is that we need to vanish harder." Kayla nodded. "Exactly." Benny stood and clapped his hands. "All right, plan, off-grid. I know just the place. It's weird, remote, poorly mapped, full of paranoid loners, and frequently smells like radish fumes." Vex looked up. Sounds like your apartment. Worse, he said. My uncle's asteroid. They took the bargain bucket. Formerly a mining skiff, now held together with spare parts, hope, and duct tape, off-world by bribing a sleepy customs officer with a fake coupon for unlimited chirp. The ship coughed through the atmosphere, past 2 arguing satellites, and jumped to a nearby sector with all the grace of a blender thrown into a washing machine. Benny's uncle had purchased the asteroid in a failed attempt to start a zero-gravity oyster farm. The oysters had developed sentience and sued. Now the rock was mostly abandoned, save for the occasional conspiracy theorist or exiled space mime. They landed between 2 lava vents and a vending machine that dispensed suspiciously warm yogurt. Benny led the way through winding tunnels lined with discarded helmets and motivational posters that read, "Trust no stars." Uncle Darnell greeted them wearing a helmet made of spaghetti strainers and holding a laser rifle duct taped to a shovel. "Benny," he shouted, "the Martian Lizard Queen told me you'd come." "Hi, Uncle D," Benny said. "Still hearing voices?" "Only Tuesdays, and sometimes when I eat olives." Kayla stepped forward. "Can we hide here?" "Hide? Sure, I've got bunkers inside bunkers. One of them even recycles your screams into music." They set up shop in the bunker shaped like a giant thermos. The walls were insulated with sound-dampening foam and regret. Jeeves was plugged into an old popcorn machine and immediately began hallucinating about customer service. The women began preparing defenses. Vex turned half the walls into trap-laced mazes. Tessa modified the plumbing system to spit acid at uninvited guests. Kayla reprogrammed the old security drones into flying mood lamps that changed colors depending on proximity to sarcasm. Benny tried to help by organizing their supplies. He accidentally activated a sentient can opener that challenged him to a duel. He lost. Later, during a strategy meeting, held in a room filled with old disco balls and gravity anomalies, Kayla displayed a hologram of a swirling star system with a blinking red mark. "Nixcore is setting up something here," she said. "This sector used to be empty. Now there's signal traffic, encrypted data, movement patterns. Too deliberate to be random." "What do you think it is?" Benny asked. "Something new. Possibly a tracking system. Possibly a trap. Possibly a really inefficient pizza delivery hub. But if we don't find out, we'll stay vulnerable." Benny rubbed his eyes. "So the choices are go there and possibly die, or stay here and wait to be found and definitely die?" Leary raised a hand. "Technically, there's a third option. Fake our identities, open a smoothie bar on Europa, and live in denial." "I vote smoothies," said Benny. "I make a killer banana chili fusion." Kayla smiled despite herself. "We go." But carefully. Before they could leave, Uncle Darnell handed Benny a small box wrapped in foil. "This belonged to your father," he said. "He told me to give it to you when things got ridiculous." Benny stared at it. "How will I know if it's time?" Uncle D grinned. "Son, this is ridiculous." The box contained a drive. It pulsed with an old encryption, the kind no one used anymore because it required empathy-based decoding. Kayla looked at it and frowned. "This wasn't built by Earth Tech or Martian. This is architect level, pre-drift. What's it doing in my dad's junk?" "No idea," she said. "But I have a bad feeling it's related." They left the asteroid just before a meteor shower of expired satellites rained down, courtesy of Uncle D's latest anti-surveillance experiment. The bargain bucket escaped with only 3 new dents and 1 suspicious smell. As they reached the edge of the star system, the coordinates Kayla marked came into focus. The readings were strange, like a digital echo, shifting every few seconds. A cloaked structure emerged on the sensors. It looked like a station, but not quite. Too jagged, too alive. Leary leaned forward. "That's not Nixcore. That's something older, something they're using." Benny sighed. "All right, let's poke the mysterious space anomaly." What could possibly go wrong? Jeeves, now mostly sane again, answered from the dashboard. "Initiating optimism suppression protocol." "Good," Benny said. "We wouldn't want too much hope ruining the mood." The station didn't have a name, which Benny thought was a red flag. Anything big enough to blot out a moon and hum ominously through 5 layers of shielding ought to at least have a plaque. The closer they drifted, the more uncomfortable everything became. Readings jittered, gravity wobbled, and Jeeves began quoting surrealist poetry in binary. "Let me get this straight," Benny said, gripping the console like it might run away. "We're approaching a mystery station with ancient tech, Cloaked coordinates, creepy architecture, and zero signage? Kayla stared ahead, calm as ever. Yes. Great, he said. Maybe they also have a gift shop. The bargain bucket latched onto a docking ring with a soft thunk that made the air inside the ship taste vaguely of burnt caramel. Benny, Leary, Kayla, Vex, and Tessa disembarked cautiously, while the remaining two stayed behind to monitor signals and periodically scream at malfunctioning telemetry. The docking corridor was quiet. Too quiet, and slightly squishy. Benny looked at the walls. Why do they look like a nervous system? Because they are, said Kayla. Of course, because we're inside a sentient building. Why wouldn't we be? The structure responded to their presence. Panels opened like blinking eyes. Lights flickered in pulses that matched Benny's heartbeat. The corridor led them into a central chamber where a spherical console hovered above the floor, humming in chords that didn't exist in any known musical scale. Leary moved closer, frowning. This architecture, it's not just architect-made, it's pre-split, before the divergence. This is foundational tech, reality manipulation level. Wait, Benny said, foundational? Like foundation of what? The simulation layers. The encoded backbone of what we perceive as normal space-time. You're standing in a room designed to argue with reality and usually win. Tessa approached the console and ran her hand along its surface. It's locked, but it's reacting to us. Kayla touched the sphere. It pulsed once. A projection shot out, surrounding them with star maps, equations, ancient text, and half-finished code. Then, without warning, it began speaking. But not in words, emotions. Benny staggered as a wave of confusion, awe, loneliness, and mild annoyance hit him all at once. Okay, no one warned me this station would feel sarcastic. It's not sarcasm, said Kayla. It's fragmented consciousness, pieces of architect data trying to find compatible frequencies. Benny held up the box his uncle gave him. Would this count as compatible? The moment he lifted it, the console reacted. Lights flared, patterns aligned. A glowing thread extended from the console and sank into the box. It opened without a hinge, and a burst of harmonic feedback made the room ripple. A voice, sharp and crystalline, echoed in their minds. Welcome, interface key accepted, initiating failsafe subroutine, tracking beacon deactivated. Failsafe? Benny said. Wait, tracking. The floor dropped out from under them. They fell through light, sound, and memory, tumbling through flickering versions of themselves. Benny saw his third-grade report card, his first heartbreak, a vending machine that once gave him 17 candy bars and a glitch. Then they landed. Same room, but different. The air was still, the lights were solid, and they weren't alone. Standing in the middle of the chamber was a man in a Nyx Corps executive uniform, flanked by two floating drones shaped like spinning coins. Welcome, said the man, smiling the way salespeople smile just before they overcharge you for socks. You've activated the seed. That makes you very valuable, very unreturnable. Kayla stepped forward. This is architect territory. You don't belong here. Oh, I know, but Nyx Corps does. We've been here for months, trying to replicate what you just did in a few seconds. You see, we figured out the Fae might be keys, but it turns out we needed a wild card. The man pointed at Benny. Leary groaned. Of course. I don't understand, Benny said. I'm not a key. I'm not even a lock. I'm like the weird drawer in the kitchen full of takeout menus and loose screws. No, said the man. You're worse. You're unpredicted. The drones began to unfold into long, snake-like machines with blinking red eyes. You don't appear in our simulations. We don't know what you'll do next. That makes you a risk. A delicious, irritating, glorious risk. Benny took a step back. Okay, I'm flattered and horrified. Is this about the coupon fraud from 2 years ago? Kayla raised a hand and the chamber responded. The walls rippled. The drones hesitated. You can't control this station, she said. You never could. Only those bonded to architect code can interact with it directly. That's why you've been luring us here. Guilty, said the man. We gave you just enough breadcrumbs, the surveillance, the freelance attacks, even the poker table. All part of the funnel. Leary's eyes glowed. You messed with my poker game? Now I'm mad. Everything happened at once. Vex lunged. Tessa triggered an EMP burst. The chamber convulsed as the console responded to their stress, opening rifts in the floor. Benny grabbed the interface box and slammed it into the console. There was a sound like a doorbell being hit with a sledgehammer. The drones screamed in digital agony, flickering, then imploding. The man tried to run but slipped on a rippling section of gravity and was swallowed by a self-sealing pocket of folded space. The chamber calmed. Benny lay on the floor, panting. That was a lot. You triggered a protective cascade, Kayla said. The station interpreted them as threats and removed them. Well, at least it didn't also remove my spleen. Tessa helped. The console has completed a partial unlock. There's more data now, stored in you. Benny stared at her. What? You're synced. The interface is now partially encoded in your neural pathways. You're technically an extension of the system. That explains the headache, he muttered. Kayla nodded. You've become the final wildcard, the one piece Nyx core can't copy. Leary grinned. Let's make them regret it. Vex looked at the console. If we can finish the unlock, we'll have access to pre-drift gate routes, places outside their reach. Or places very much in their reach, Benny said. But hey, I've already lost my last 2 jobs, a blender and most of my dignity. Might as well lose a galaxy too. Jeeves chimed in over comms. Sir, might I suggest snacks first? You perform poorly when hypoglycemic. Benny sighed. Fine, 1 cosmic rebellion, but only after lunch. Benny stood in the center of the ancient architect console chamber with a sandwich in one hand and destiny in the other. The sandwich was mediocre. The destiny, according to Kayla, was catastrophic. So, he said between bites, to recap, I'm now partially bonded to a cosmic operating system older than civilization. I've accidentally become a variable in Nyx Core's simulations they can't predict, and I have spicy mustard in my ear. Leary nodded. It's probably quantum mustard. It's evolving. The chamber around them had stabilized after the last showdown, revealing layers of architect code now slowly interfacing with Benny's neural patterns. Tessa had set up a temporary firewall using a modified hairdryer and half a toaster, while Vex patrolled the perimeter carrying a glowing spear made from what used to be a lamp. Jeeves hovered above, projecting a map. Sir, Nyx Core's fleet is en route. Estimated arrival, 17 minutes. Margin of error, extremely inconvenient. 17 minutes? Benny said. That's barely enough time to panic. They've located us, Kayla said. Now that the console's active and synced with you, they'll risk anything to take control of it. I'm flattered, Benny said, also mildly terrified. We have one chance, Kayla said. You can use the console. Finish the unlock. The station holds access to the Architect Gate network, routes lost for millennia. If we activate it before they breach, we can jump somewhere they can't follow. And if I mess up, Benny asked, the console might fold you into a metaphysical paradox. I already feel like one, he said. I mean, I was a guy who couldn't fix his microwave 3 weeks ago. Now I'm apparently a human USB stick for forbidden knowledge. You've grown, Leary said. Kind of. Benny exhaled. All right, time to push the big, glowy, probably dangerous button. He stepped forward. The console pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Symbols hovered around him, floating in and out of his vision like shy thoughts. He reached out and placed both hands on the interface. The chamber dimmed. He wasn't standing anymore. He was drifting, in memory, in potential, in tangled threads of what had been and what might be. The console didn't speak in words, but in questions. Would he protect? Would he destroy? Would he choose safety or uncertainty? Would he order pineapple on pizza? Yes to everything except the pineapple, he muttered. Then came the unlock. The room flared. Pathways shimmered into existence, gateways to places unmapped, timelines collapsed, possibilities orphaned by time. One opened ahead of them like a blossoming wormhole wearing its best dress. Jeeves blinked. Gate online. Spatial configuration abstract. Probability of being somewhere not currently on fire acceptable. Let's move, Kayla said. But as they prepared to board the ship, the docking ring exploded. Nyx Core's boarding team arrived in a cloud of gas and pretentious branding. Their captain, a man named Lex Vandrell, strutted in with a grin and a gun made of folded dimensions. Hello again, he said. I see you've made friends with the big toy. Benny stepped forward. I'd offer you a sandwich, but I licked it earlier. Lex raised his weapon. Give me the console link. We can still give you a corporate partnership, exclusive rights, a limited edition hoodie. You guys really don't understand, no, do you? Benny said. Vex moved before Lex could react, throwing her spear through the air and pinning his sleeve to the wall. Tessa followed with a blast of static that fried half his tech. Lex yanked free, hair smoldering, and lunged toward the console. Benny intercepted. They collided. Lex reached for the console. Benny reached faster. Benny's hand hit the surface. He opened the gate fully. The chamber roared. Light poured from every seam. Nyx Corps soldiers stumbled, blinded. Vandrel screamed as the console rejected him, flinging him into a containment loop made entirely of sarcasm. System override complete, Jeeves announced. Destination, random. Passenger count, 6 fugitives. 1 former slacker, 0. The gate expanded. Benny turned to the others. Time to jump. They ran. The ship lifted. The gate swallowed them whole. And then silence. Stars, color without name. Moments folded into one another. Then clarity. The bargain bucket reappeared above a garden world untouched by charted hands. A station orbited lazily in the sky, marked with architect sigils. The console link blinked green. No enemies, no signals, just wind, leaves, and the smell of something warm and not trying to kill them. Benny sat on the ramp of the ship, staring out at a sunset painted in 11 colors, none of which existed on the spectrum back home. Kayla joined him, holding 2 cups. "You did it. I pressed a button," Benny said. "A really scary button. I don't even know what I pressed. It could have been a galactic reset. You made a choice. That's more than most people do." He sipped. It was surprisingly good. "What happens now?" "We build, hide, share what we found when the galaxy's ready." "And me?" Benny asked. "What's my job in all this?" "You're the unpredictable element," Kayla said. "That makes you the most dangerous one of all." Benny blinked. "Me dangerous? I still can't do my taxes." "You don't need to," Leary called from the ship. "We programmed Jeeves to evade tax detection." "Illegally," Tessa added. "Very illegally." Benny leaned back and looked at the stars. He had started this adventure as a broke guy with nothing but a greasy dollar and bad life choices. Now he had a spaceship, a found family of fugitives, a head full of cosmic secrets, and a highly sarcastic AI. He had grown, not taller, not smarter, but braver, stranger, a little more like someone who knew how to fight for something, maybe even someone worth following. He grinned. "All right, universe, your move." The end.